I'm Brigitte Bonisch-Brednich, and I'm currently the head of School of Social and Cultural Studies at Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand. And I'm by training an anthropologist.
Oh, that's interesting. And I was wondering, because you have done very interesting work around academic mobility and drawing on ethnographic research. So based on your work, what are the key trends in the current higher education?
What I find really interesting in higher education is that mobility is assumed as a basically unquestionable good thing. So if you're not mobile, that is something really bad. And I think that's a very interesting thing to consider, because I'm quite happy to say that mobility can be very good for a lot of people, but it's definitely not good for everybody. And the way students and academics experience mobility is very, very different and really depends on personalities, but also something like class, upbringing, or ethnic background. There's also quite a lot of limitations to it. So actually making mobility as an expected and basically unqualified thing, which is expected of everybody, is very dangerous for academic quality and also for people's lives, especially for women.
So, if we think about the higher education as it's now, so based on your work and also on your own experiences, what are the challenges and possibilities for positive changes?
In mobility?
Yeah.
Well, I think that some nations, for example Switzerland, and to a degree also France and maybe Germany, are thinking about now, they're accepting now the research that, for example, that can be detrimental to women's careers. So they're actually thinking of ways to ensure that everybody has access to international networks, but doesn't necessarily have to leave for really long periods. For example, Switzerland is now implementing grant money for women to organize conferences or invite internationally renowned scholars in their field to their home university, so that they can actually make the international networks at home without having to leave their small children or aging parents or their partner. Or also have grants where you can go for shorter periods of time, for example during the longer holidays of your children or something. So they're becoming more flexible. There is a rising awareness that they need to work around mobility to accommodate more people's needs. And with students, there's something similar going on, that I think there's a growing acceptance that quite a lot of students don't really gain that much from international mobility if it's either very short or not prepared in a certain way, because they tend to stick then in the international student community and don't really integrate. And so don't really get the best experience if that's actually not framed in the right way. The chances, of course, is that a lot of really good and well-functioning international networks are formed, that research becomes much more comparative and also much more informed by transnational perspectives. And I think that's definitely a good thing.
Yes. And finally, you have already touched the issue of gender. But I was wondering how gender, and if we add the combination of social class, fits in this whole question of academic mobility. So do you have anything?
Great question. And I think social class and also ethnicity is one of the problematic points, because in my research it became very clear, for example, that people are really made into international scholars, and that very often starts at school. So if your parents have the money and also the habitus to actually send you abroad, even as a high school student, or you have a gap year, then you develop a sense of that is actually doable. You have much greater confidence to do it again and also quite a lot more money often. And then there's also another thing which I found really interesting when it comes to social class. What do people dream of when they think of academic mobility? So what do they dare to dream of? So some people from high middle or upper middle class backgrounds are extremely confident and do very strategic choices where to go to. Let's say Ivy League, Oxford, Cambridge, the Sorbonne or something, whereas other people who are actually from lower social backgrounds but still are mobile quite often go by intuition or lifestyle choices, or where their boyfriend lives, or they just wander or drop in somewhere by accident. And so the mobility is there, but it's not a strategic mobility. And that often leads to people ending up in places, for example, New Zealand, who are adventurous, who are not very conventional, and quite often from working class or lower social middle class backgrounds. It's interesting. So even in mobility, if it happens, there are quite a lot of distinct differences of what people do and dare to do or just do by accident.
Okay, these were my 3 questions I wanted to ask. So thank you very, very much for this short
that's
interview.
Great, thank you.